there is another thing that we are going to talk about is the approval process.
I have a question, G.
Yes, Ubajit, tell me.
So in the workflow, there was an option which was mentioned as some field update or something. So email was one of the options, and there was another, and I think the third option was field update.
Right. We'll use the field update and approval process. So you'll get the concept of that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. So an approval process is very similar to a workflow. Okay. So the only difference between an approval process and a workflow is that an approval process requires an approval from someone. Okay. Based on the approval or rejection, it performs action. So here also you deal with an object and criteria. Okay. Let's say in your company you always need to take permission from let's say the VP of operations if you have to take a project which is more than 500 hours of duration, right? So the object can be project, criteria can be duration greater than 500 hours, right? And then there is a approval process which will go on for this. So it's not a workflow. Workflow is what? You define the criteria, you define the action, the criteria is met, action happen, end of the story, right? But for an approval process, there is a criteria which is met, then the process begins. So the record goes for an approval process and then it is submitted for approval, then the approver receives it, he approves or rejects, and based on that you want to perform certain actions, right? So here you have to define object, you have to define criteria, you have to define approver, who should receive the approval request, who should be the approver, and you have to define actions. So here it is not as simple as a workflow. Here you have actions at all different stages. You have actions for submission stage when the record is submitted for approval, approval stage if the record is approved, rejection stage if the record is rejected, right? So we have actions at all these stages. So we have to define action for all the stages: submission, approval, rejection. Okay. So let's do this example here. If a project has duration greater than 500, it needs to be approved by Kiran, so you can define any user there. And how would you distinguish? Then some projects will be on the submission stage, some of them will be approved, some of them will be rejected. How would we distinguish which project was approved and which was rejected? So for that, let us have a status field. Approval status field, which can be a pick list, which will show the approval status of project, and the options can be pending, approved, and rejected. Okay, so any project which is pending for approval, the status should automatically become a pending. Any project which has been approved by the approver should automatically become approved. Any project which has been rejected should become rejected. So based on this field value, we can understand, right? Since this, so this is the field update part. So we're going to talk about this field update thing using this approval process, right? So first thing that we have to do is we have to create this approval status field on the project object, right? So let's just go to setup. Create workflow and approvals. Before that we'll have to create the field. So before I go to the approval thing, we'll go to objects and create the field. So go to the project and create a field approval status, which is going to be a pick list. Go to next. Call it approval status. Options can be pending, approved, rejected. 3 available options can be pending, approved, and rejected. And then click on next. I think it got created. Yeah, it got created at the first attempt only. You were making a mistake there. And what I have to do, I have to make this field as a read-only field, right? This field should be read-only. Otherwise, anyone can go and make a rejected project also as approved. So end user should not be able to change it. For making it read-only, what do we do? Field level security. Go to that particular field. Go to field level security. Make it a read-only field. So now manually you cannot edit this field. This field the value of this field will be controlled by our approval process. So if the project is pending or it has been approved or it has been rejected, that will be totally controlled by our approval process. So what we have to do here, we just have to go and create the approval process. So go to setup, create, workflows and approvals, go to the approval process. Okay, which object? The approval process is for which object? Project. Select the object, then create new approval process, use jump start wizard. There are two options, you use jump start wizard. Jump start wizard. Big or very big project approval. Criteria we have to define. What is the criteria that we have?
Duration greater than 500 hours.
Right. So duration greater than 500 hours is my criteria. Okay. Then select your approver. Okay. So we have certain options. We have the option of letting the submitter choose the approver manually. In that case, what will happen? The person who is submitting for approval will have the option of choosing the approver. You can define it based on the hierarchy, who is your manager and all, right? You can assign it to a queue or you can assign it to an individual. So as of now, we do not have any queue created. So we will give it to individual. So you can go give it to so whoever is your project manager or the head or the chief of operations, so some user whoever needs to approve, you can give it to that person, right? And then click on save. Okay, what does it say? It says remember, you will not be able to use this approval process until it has been activated. That's fine. Done. Now you just click on view approval process detail page. Click on this. It will take you to the detail page where you have to come and define the actions. So in workflow we just had immediate and time dependent action because there were no stages involved in that. Here we have stages. So we will have to define action for different stages. So like initial submission action, final approval action, final rejection action. So initial submission action means what actions you want to do when the record is submitted for approval. The moment it is submitted for approval, I want a field update. The field that I want to update is approval status. Approval status field I want to update. I want to make its value to pending. So the moment the record is submitted for approval, the value should automatically become pending. You have the option of putting other actions as well here. On the submission, you want to send one email as well along with this. You can just add one more email alert, and the same way we define an email alert for workflow. What should be the template, who should receive the email, so that ways we can define. Sorry?
We have seen that
Initial submission. I mean, you can, my point is that for any particular stage, you can define multiple actions also. It's not that you can just put one action.
where did we go and create
Add new action. Under whichever stage you want to put action, just go and say add new action. Then go to final approval actions. So after the record is approved by manager or by anyone, just click on field update. So it should be updated to approved.
so how will that stage will come like to approving
When someone approves, it will automatically final.
there is a button
How it will be approved, that I'll show afterwards. And if that is rejected, if the record is rejected, then the status should be updated to rejected. So we right. So we have defined actions for all the stages. When the record is submitted for approval, what would happen? When the record is approved by the approver, what happens? When the record is rejected, it's not approved, then what happens? So we have defined criteria for everything. What is approval step? Yeah. So if you have a multi-step approval process, then approval steps will come into picture.
so you first click on the approval step, you create a step and then you just
Yes. Sorry?
create a step first.
No. So by default, any approval process will at least have one step, right? So this is a one-step approval process. So by default, it comes when you create an approval process. If you want more steps, then you can have more steps into that. That it goes from one person to the other person and all. Right? Suvajit?
Question. Yeah. So my question is, so we have defined that, an approver can, so the final person or the final reviewer can either approve or reject, the project. So if that person has the option to select, why do we then define that, the final approval action will be either approved or rejection? I mean, that person will have the ability to pick that kind of a status, right? Whether he wants to approve the project or reject it. So I'm not
He can pick the approver. I mean, that person has the option of picking the approver. He does not have the option of approving it.
Okay. And then, so let's say that I pick you as an approver, so it goes to you.
And then I will approve or reject.
Okay, alright. So you do get two options, approve or reject, right?
Right.
That is what I'm defining here?
Right.
Okay. But I can also define in the pick list for that particular field itself, right? So because he gets the assignment and then automatically he will get those two options in the as a pick list, right? That's what we are defining?
Right. So he'll have two options. I will show you that process. I mean, let us go into that process, how we will approve that later on. Let us just understand this much as of now. And once we see the process, how it is approved, I think it will be more clear.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Kiran.
I lost
Got it? Got it back? Suvaji, just wait for a minute. I think Kiran is trying to reconnect.
No problem. Okay.
Okay. So we are getting that thing. How does, sorry? Yeah, we'll do the testing part. So we have created the process, everything is done. Now let's go and do an approval process on a record and see how it is working, right? But before that, we'll have to activate this. So as we did in validation rule, as we did it in workflow rule. Suvajit, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So we have created the process. Now what we'll do, we will, before it starts working, what we'll have to do, we'll have to activate it as we did it for our workflow also, right? So just go ahead and activate this thing. Okay. Now let's see how this approval process works. Go and create a project record. Now you can see. Okay. So I'm just creating a record with duration 600 hours. Approval status, I can keep anything. From my side, I make it approved. So this approval process does not start automatically, like workflow actions start immediately or automatically. You do not have to do anything. You just have to create the record. For approval process, to start the approval, you will have to go and click on submit for approval. After creation of record, any record which meets criteria, you have to go and submit it for approval. First of all, the user who has created submits the record for approval. So click on submit for approval. it's read only. You cannot edit it, but the problem with this is this current user has a system administrator profile, so he has the option of editing read only fields also. So for the system administrator I could do it, but otherwise anyone else would not be able to do it. Now it is submitted for approval. Click on submit for approval. The moment someone clicks on submit for approval, so what is the submission action? Approval status becomes pending. It has become pending, right? And the record also gets locked, so that, I mean, you can unlock it, you can see the unlock button here, but a normal user will not see it. We can see it because the current user that I am logged into is a system administrator, has all those permissions. So this record gets locked. After it is submitted for approval, no changes will be allowed on the record, right?
See, how will the user know that by submitting the approval? How we know that there is a approval submission, so we are directly contact.
You create the record, you will have to submit it for approval. Now you leave, apply for leaves, you have to submit, otherwise it just stays in draft.
No, I don't know that.
I think, yeah, to some extent you are correct, it should come, but as of now they have not given that system. So you have to go and manually submit it for approval. Now the approver receives an email. Subhajit, you were asking something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but what was the question from Kiran?
Yeah, she was saying that how would a user understand that he has to submit this record for approval? Like which record needs an approval and which record does not need an approval. So she says that ideally a pop-up sort of thing should come, which should prompt the user to submit it for approval.
Right.
Yeah, so but that thing is not there. What we can do is we could have, I mean, that is one way. I'll talk about that after we finish this thing. So we can do some sort of customization from our side, but yeah, we cannot bring the pop-up thing. Okay, so now the approver will receive an email saying that you have received an approval request. So Kiran, can you just go to your email and check if you have received an email now? No email? Is it getting into your spam or something? Not received? Okay. So this approver basically receives an email where he is intimated about the approval request, or the other way where the approver can see the approval request is on the home page. So if you go to home page, so here Kiran is the approver, so ideally that request should have come to her home page as well. Items to approve. So anything which has been submitted for approval comes to the home page of the approver. So the approver can always log into his Salesforce account, go to the home page and go to the items to approve, see all the records. Like there is a manager who has to approve everyone's leave, so he can on a regular basis go to his home page and see all those requests, and he can then look into those and approve or reject. Click onto it and then you have the option of approving or rejecting it. So whatever, I mean, put a comment if you want to, and then you can approve or reject it. If he clicks on approve, then what happens? Final approval. So the status gets updated to approved. If he clicks on reject, then what happens? Status gets updated to rejected. Right? Let's click on approve. See, the status got updated to approved. Clear? Any questions on this approval process? How it works and all?
So, Jeet, coming back to her question, do we have an ability of creating an assignment rule where, let's say that I, instead of going and clicking on a button to submit a record for approval, automatically whenever I create a record, it goes to the approver for review or approval or rejection?
No.
So assignment rule, so it doesn't automatically.
No. So there is no way an approval can be submitted automatically. It always requires someone manually go and submit it for approval. Right?
Okay.
Now coming back to what Kiran was asking, that how would someone understand whether this record, sometimes it might be the case that you are not aware of the fact that this record requires an approval or not. In that case, you can create a workflow and update the field. So any kind of what do you call it? Sorry. Any record where the duration is less than 500, you can automatically update the field to approved, self-approved or approved. So because it's a read-only field, so it is automatically controlled and made approved. And anything which is more than say 500 should be pending by default. So through that workflow rule, then rest of the things can be controlled through the approval process. But manually, it always have to be submitted for approval. The reason for that is that approval for anything which goes for approval, the end users in most of the cases want to review it and manually send it for approval rather than sending it in bulk. So they do not prefer. So most of the cases you would want to send it for approval after making all your final modifications and all. Sometimes you need the ability of saving the record as a draft. You want to say, okay, fine, let me just save it as a draft and I will submit it after some time. One common thing that comes into mind is if you have submitted your appraisal form sometime, you will see that they give you that appraisal form updation available for 1 month. You can submit it anytime, but yeah, you can keep on making changes and saving it. So any such process approval, they do not want, this is a standard thing, so they do not want people to automate this. Because it has to be manually approved, so they want that, okay, when someone should actually take effort to go and submit it for approval. So that sort of thing. So out of the box options which are available, they do not allow us to auto submit for approval. It always needs to be submitted for approval, right?
So when you develop an application, and you've been doing for a while, so do you have the? A developer can create a pop-up window. Is that ability there through?
You can
create pop-up window.
Yeah, you can create a pop-up window using some programming skills. So pop-up can come, but still it cannot submit it for approval by default.
Okay. But the pop-up message, those things can be.
Those things can come.
Okay.
This question is, can a pop-up message come actually? So that can come using some programming, but still submission for approval will not happen. Pop-up message, we just have to get a JavaScript there, and that should be able to throw some just Windows message comes in. Please don't forget to submit this for approval. That sort of thing can come. Right. So sorry.
The question, answering the question, I didn't understand. Like creating a process where before getting something automatically should be approved. I didn't get the answer. I didn't understand the answer.
It will not be automatically approved. It will not be automatically submitted for approval. Coming back to your question where you said how would you understand whether this needs approval, you can do a workflow also for that, and any record which is less than 500 should be approved. I mean, status of that should be, the moment you see the value is less than 500, status should automatically become approved. So that way, what kind of help you want? You tell me.
Still, how many records
So anything which is approved should not go for approval. Anything which is pending, that should go for approval. That is. So you open a record on the approval status. It is after anything which is less than 500 is automatically status gets updated to approve. You will see submit for approval button, but you will not be able to submit it. The moment you say it will say it does not meet criteria. Yeah. Duration more than 500 hours, right?
Okay. First check suddenly people submit for approval. First it will check
criteria, right? So any record which does not meet criteria, it will not be submitted for approval. It will say that it does not meet the criteria. Clear? Rupali? Clear? Questions? Subhajit, okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. So, what is the next thing that we are going to talk about? So, approval process is clear, right? Okay. So now what we'll have to do, so these are the 4 things on our business logic. You can define more business logics, but these are 4 declarative way of using business logic. Once we start using programming, we will be able to use a few more, but that is what we are not discussing here. So we have talked about 4 things: formulas, validation rules, workflow rules, and approval process. Right? 4 things that we are talking about. So what is a formula? So if I have to just quickly take you through the entire thing again. Formula is basically a field type, right? So formula is a field type where you can define some logic, and based on the logic, certain calculations can be done on the field. So it is not always about mathematical or logical calculations. We can do other type of things also. For example, one small example comes to mind, that there is a client who has a lot of accounts, right? So he has like let's say 10,000 accounts he has, and he has the calling ability. He has salespeople who can call only 1,000 in a month, right? Now, if only 1,000 can be called and he has 10,000, how does he decide which all should be called? You have 10,000 accounts and you can call only 1,000 of them. You have the bandwidth available only for calling 1,000. How will you decide which 1,000 should be called? Based on some criteria. Maybe accounts which have maximum most revenue, accounts which are big companies, accounts which are in your city, some criteria, right? So for that, what you have to do? You have to go and manually check, let's say revenue. You want to categorize your accounts into category A, B, and C. Based on revenue, you want to segregate that. So you might have to go and manually do it, but using a formula, you can easily do it. Give it a value category A if the revenue is more than 1 million. If the revenue is more than 500K, make a value category B, right? So that ways you can do those things. So I'm going to share a few small docs, as I said. Just give me a minute. Let me just fetch the document. So this is the first thing that I'm going to share. This is the first document that I'm going to share, which is completely on formulas. Okay. So here what you have to do, you have to look into the formulas, the usage of it. So there are so many examples which have been account rating, the way I was just talking about. Based on annual revenue, billing country and type, it decides whether the account is hot, warm or cold. Right, so segregating the accounts. So this is a good example. Contract aging, try to find out the age of a contract.